Removal of people with no right to be here in the UK. Well, we've got Amanda Akas here, once again, along with immigration lawyer Harjap Singh, Bhangal. So a very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. And I really want to get your view on what the government is announcing today. But first, Amanda, perhaps set it out for us what their plans are. They say to speed up the appeals process of asylum seekers.
Yes, so the government's clearly under huge pressure around the issue in particular of the number of asylum seekers being housed in hotels. We've seen those protests across the country. We've had proposals from Reform UK effectively suggesting an end to the asylum system, people being deported back to countries regardless of their safety if that was done. So Labour know they need to come up with some more answers on how to show that they're trying to fulfil their promise to end the use of asylum hotels by the end of this Parliament. They now say that they're introducing a new fast-track appeals process, which effectively will no longer be judges deciding people's appeals if they've had their initial application rejected by the Home Office, but instead there will be, they say, professional, trained adjudicators who will be independent from government, who will be making those decisions to just focus on these specific cases to get through them more quickly, because at the moment there's more than 50,000 people waiting on average more than a year to have their cases heard, which puts pressure on the government because during that time they're not allowed to work and therefore they are being housed by the Home Office. So this is the plan the government has come up with. They say they've been working on it for some months now, but it does appear to have been sort of announced today, sort of in reaction to what we've been seeing going on over the past.
So Harjap Singh, Bhangal, what do you make of it? Does it sound like a good idea to you?
It definitely sounds as some sort of solution. The government's under immense pressure. Backlogs are huge. Currently, appeal waiting times are around about a year, and there's thousands in the backlogs, over about 51,000. So during this time, asylum seekers can't work. The equivalent would be saying that imagine if A-level students this year sat their exams and were told, well, hold on, you're not going to get your results to 2 years' time, but in the meantime, you can't go to university. You'd have mayhem and there'd be pandemonium on the streets. You'd have people idle with nothing to do. Essentially, this is what's happening to asylum seekers. They come in, they do their interview, and they have to wait years potentially for a decision, and then when the decision is wrong because it's made incorrectly, as we find out in the appeal process, then they have to wait a year for an appeal date, and it leads to huge backlogs.
OK, so the government says this needs to be addressed,
yes,
and that will help ease some of the pressure on these hotels, which are the focus at the moment of lots of public frustration. But what about the way in which they're suggesting speeding it up? They're talking about getting rid of these, is it first-tier tribunals?
Judges,
they're talking about judges, basically, and replacing them with a panel of professional adjudicators. Do you know what that means, a professional adjudicator, and where they come from?
Yeah. So previously, under a previous Labour government, judges were called adjudicators. So it's just a type of phrase, really. Essentially, adjudicator will be a judge, but specifically designed to deal with immigration only. I don't think they're going to do away with judges per se, because they're currently recruiting for judges. There's an advert out in the MOJ recruiting for the JAC, are recruiting judges at the moment, and that's open in September for anyone who wants to apply, and they do that constantly all year round. However, adjudicators will specifically be dealing with targeted immigration cases. They might previously be immigration solicitors or barristers, hence they won't require the additional training, and they'll be able to speed up matters a lot quicker. The problem is that a lot of asylum seekers are unrepresented in court, so it takes a long time to explain things to them. Everything has to be explained, everything has to be translated because of the cuts to legal aid, so therefore they're not represented. Another big problem is that the Home Office, in some cases, don't even send a representative of their own to argue their own case. Many judges and many people in courts will tell you that. So the system is actually broken from the Home Office side of things. They take ages to make a decision which could be made in 1 week. If you remember, a few years ago, there was a story about a warehouse, literally where they found stacks and stacks of files with dust on them, which hadn't even been touched in relation to asylum. And then they added this to a backlog. And the student, they hired gap year students to make decisions on complex legal matters. When they get taken to appeal, and appeals, 50% are decided that this decision is made wrongly. So the whole system is wrong at the core. It's essentially like saying you have a house with shaky walls and a shaky foundation. It's not going to be mended by sticking a couple of tiles on the roof. You need to really restore the whole system from roots upwards. And that's going to be a big problem because we notoriously know that the Home Office is where political careers go to die. So Yvette Cooper really has got a lot of pressure on her at the moment.
It sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money to create this new system with enough capacity to be able to get through these cases so quickly and recruit all these adjudicators, and they're already looking for new judges. I mean, are there enough of these professional people around?
Well, the current recruitment process takes a year. So people who applied last July are now getting recruited, their letters coming through now in September. So we're assuming that the adjudicators will probably take the same amount of time. The average salary for an immigration judge, if you're fee paid, is around about £500–600 a day. So you're looking at about £100,000 a year. If you're going to recruit 100, 200, 300 judges, then you need the courts and the court time. There's absolutely no courts that have got court time at the moment. Will they set up specific buildings and specific courts, whereabouts, extra translators, Home Office staff to argue the cases, and then who is going to represent the asylum seekers? Once again, if you have to explain something to someone who doesn't speak the language in layman's terms, it might take you half a day just to explain the whole process to them. So you really need to have the representation on that side in order to speed these up, because every asylum seeker will then want to attend their hearing. You have to make sure the Home Office attend. This is not going to be easy, once again, but it is something better than nothing. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. Labour have got form for this before. They had a fast-track system in the asylum system. I used to be on it. So there used to literally be, people used to come in on a Monday, they'd be detained from Dover, sent to a place called Oakington near Cambridge. On Wednesday, they'd have their interview. On Friday, they'd have a decision. And if they lodged an appeal at Harmondsworth in Heathrow, there used to be a court in the detention centre. So you'd only have to walk 500 yards to the court and your hearing would be next week. Everything would be done and dusted in a month. That's how Labour had it running before. That's why you did not have asylum hotels and you did not have this phenomenon. But it's something Labour will go back to form. They're fast-tracking cases, they're fast-tracking appeals, they're renegotiating agreements to send people back to countries which, unfortunately, after 2016, we just didn't have.
Yeah. But now the numbers are so huge, and as you say, there's a lot that needs to fall into place before things can speed up. So really interesting to get your take on things. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.